Hi, welcome to the Awkward Angler Podcast, an authentic series talking about fishing, social justice, and storytelling with folks within the outdoor industry. I'm your host, Erica Nelson. My pronouns are she and her. I'm a self-taught angler that is passionate about sharing my learning journey. I am also a Brown Folks Fishing Ambassador and organizational leadership developer with incredible amounts of optimism. Understanding that we all have something to learn from each other, this podcast is for the aspiring, the beginner, the mediocre, and the expert angler willing to learn new skills and how to be a better ally. Working through hard conversations can definitely get a little awkward. We fumble through them and worry about getting it right. It's time to step out of your comfort zone and start getting awkward. This show is for mature audiences. Be sure to follow for updates on awkwardangler.com and on Instagram at awkwardangler. I just wanted to take this week to send a thank you and some appreciations, as well as share some feedback that I've received so far. This week has been incredibly busy, not only personally, professionally, and social media wise. It's been awesome to have such high engagement, and I really just want to send a thank you, and I have so much appreciation for all the folks that have listened to the podcast, and a special thank you to all of the guests that I've had to carve out time to talk about important issues and topics and be able to laugh and in a non-judgmental space. And I love conversation. I love learning from people and lifelong learner here. So I have already gained so much knowledge in how to be a better angler, and I hope that you have too. So this space that I've been trying to create is an authentic series, and I feel pretty accomplished in that. Really getting guests on a realistic and genuine level is what I've been aiming for. I'm not big on live streaming or live shows. It just feels like a lot of pressure. So just a huge thank you to the guests for really bringing their authentic self. And I just wanted to kind of take this time to give an update and, again, what's around the corner. So the idea of the podcast came around November 2020, and I was actually able to launch in December. So that was a really quick turnaround, which now that I look back, I'm like, wow, that was a lot of work. With now 5 episodes, well, I guess this is 6, I just wanted to have this week to thank new followers and listeners. So some feedback that I have received has been overwhelmingly positive, and I wanted to share a few comments since the launch. And we'll start with episode 1, which was with Anna Lay, fish biologist, and we talked about dating. So some of the comments, I'd say most of the comments were around, can you date another fly fisher, or do you fish with your partner or spouse? And I love these few comments that I picked out. The first one is, Fran's gone fishing. I do not fish with my husband. He doesn't like fishing. I enjoy fishing by myself with friends. I'm happy to have a hobby. Haha, obsession. That is just about me. I've been married for 30-something years, and it's important to have a life where you get to throw off your roles and just be. So I can definitely feel that, although I'm not married, but throwing off roles and just being on the river, being in the present moment, I can absolutely relate to. At Fish on the Fly 99, I fish with my hubby. Our first date was on the frying pan, but I love the solitude of being alone. At Amanda Outdoors, my husband is my fishing partner, but I also totally get what you're saying in the podcast. Some days he just needs to let me work out my issues out on the water by myself. Fishing is another way we grow together as a couple. We also laughed real hard during this part of the podcast. That's great that you guys listen together. I'm excited to hear that. That brings some joy. Let's see. At Jagruski, our fights really didn't occur until we started fishing together. Once things got easier for me, we both got less frustrated, and now it's just fun. Glad to finally contribute and row him onto some fish instead of it being one-sided. Yep. That makes me laugh. Kind of going back to the first episode of arguing on the river and how those are heightened when you're in a relationship together sometimes. And then also a lot of folks do fish with their partner, and that's really awesome to hear. Episode 2 with Brown Girl Outdoor World, Demisha Dennis. Thank you for the real, REEL conversation. Love the show. And that's from Trout and Back Again. At Monica.Rockwater, I don't think pain should be the only way we move. And that's a quote from Demisha. And that is powerful. So thanks again. Demisha's awesome, wonderful human up in Toronto, Canada, and doing some really awesome, great work and really focusing on joy and happiness, and that, her life is not always, should be in pain as a Black woman moving about the world. So really happy to have her in my life. Episode 3 with Patricia. She's also a diversity practitioner, and a comment from the Vegan Angler. I'm so glad to see and hear Patricia on your podcast. When I first started fly fishing, I came across her post about how fly fishing is beautifully intertwined with our Vietnamese culture. I had this booming realization that suddenly and finally validated my experience as an angler and the awesome relationship that I have with my first generation Vietnamese American grandmother when we go fishing together. Thanks so much for the conversation, ladies. I am really so grateful to hear it. Thank you so much. That really is awesome to hear. And Patricia just is a wonderful human as well. Along with episode 4 with Marco Camamira at f.hiram. I don't fly fish, but I'm loving your podcast. These conversations are relevant across the outdoor rec activities. And that is really the aim of this podcast, is not just fly fishing, but also other outdoor recreational activities. So there's so much crossover, and some of the things that I see are siloing and other people not talking. One of the things that I noticed when I used to be a big backpacker, and I would always wonder, why don't backpackers and hunters intermingle, or I never see them at the same trade shows or same events or talking across social platforms. I'm we're literally doing the same thing. At the end of the day, we're all walking in the wilderness for extended periods of time or just chilling out there. And so there's a lot of crossover. And, when we talk about backpackers and hunters and, protection of our lands and clean water and air, those are important conversations where we do need to not be siloed and talk and just work together. So anyway, I appreciate that comment, because that's what I think of. At Lise_0202, I've been seeing a lot of gaslighting from the angling community about geotagging / refusal to acknowledge anything but the extremes of the concept. Excited to hear what you have to say. And again, this was actually before episode 5. And the episode 4 with Marco, we kind of we started to scratch the surface with geotagging and really start to look at land management and how we as anglers can take individual responsibility for our impact, and how we can get involved in conservation in other different areas in our local, where we live. So, that comment and also the conversation with Marco really drove us to do episode 5, because we also agree with that comment of, there's gaslighting and there is such extremes of the concept. So why can't we have an open conversation about it? And it doesn't have to be either or, which again, we'll get into episode 5 next. Last comment on episode 4. I really enjoyed listening how he guides residents from his own state. Keeping information open is so great for everyone, and especially the waterways and the life they carry. Knowledge is a positive thing, and acting selfishly to keep that information to oneself has a negative impact on everything and everyone. I really enjoyed this episode and all the knowledge She Connects Fly shared. I can never learn enough. So thank you so much for that comment. And I really enjoyed Marco and his knowledge and invited him. We also went, when we talk about geotagging, it's not just one-sided, and I wanted to hear multiple perspectives and I have a group of folks with interesting perspectives on social justice and just being outdoor recreationalists, athletes, etc. So I didn't know their personal stances or perspectives on geotagging. So I, invited them to a space and not knowing what to expect. I did not set this up as a debate, but more or less a conversation. And I really feel that is true development and growth when folks can come to the table and openly feel safe to express their opinions and their perspectives and, be respectful about disagreeing and have a different perspective. So I knew that this was such a great crowd on episode 5 to have Vasu, Jalen, Anna, and Marco really engaging in the conversation about geotagging. And I have received an overwhelmingly positive response from folks that have actually listened to the podcast. And one of my favorite comments is, this episode was great. I think a lot of people are making assumptions that you are in favor of publicly geotagging sensitive areas or forcing people to give up their special fishing hole. She Connects Fly said something really powerful, which I'll paraphrase poorly. No one is asking you to give up the location of your secret spot. We're asking for help accessing the resources and knowledge to find our own secret spots. Your guests do a solid job explaining the complexity of sharing spots and the ways in which they limit sharing certain places to people they know that they can trust and act responsibly. On the other end of the spectrum, getting harassed for sharing the location of a popular brown trout spot featured prominently in state fish and game brochures is a perfect example of the type of geotagging we should be engaging in to help novice anglers. And again, this, my platform of Awkward Angler is truly for novice anglers. I have a learning and development, training, organizational development background. And so the way that, we do things and the way that we approach things and how things are set up are just so interesting to me. And I found that as a self-taught angler, I didn't have a mentor. I didn't have anyone to kind of tell me these things. And so in order to have a more, accessible, equitable, and welcoming community that kind of sets new anglers up in a way that's more welcoming and inclusive is to talk about these issues, because I've had to I started this platform to ask questions and I am continuing the learning each time. I'm also improving my skill, which is awesome to see, but that comes with time. And I think anglers know that, right? Like we put in the time to understand areas, to find new locations, to gain new knowledge, new rig setups, new ways to fish. And that is part of the beauty and the growth of angling. But if you kind of take a step back, like how do you help a new person get into this, and how do you set them up to kind of understand just kind of ways of doing things, so that way we are protecting our areas. Hopefully everyone enjoyed that episode. And I know that there was a lot of other commenters that were, kind of going back to Lisa's comment of a lot of gaslighting and refusal to give up anything but the extremes of the concept. So that was truly the point of pointing that out into the industry, that this doesn't have to be super extreme. And if you are on the extreme, let's talk about it. Have the conversation. And, I've received a lot of emails and messages from new anglers that were just so excited because they've heard about this, but they didn't really know how to navigate it. So I feel like the goal was accomplished in what I do in this platform. So thank you so much for the support. And sharing, again, is really helpful to help the industry kind of come together and have these conversations. All right, so what's next? I have a couple episodes already pre-recorded that I'm excited to dive into and They're also kind of a little bit shifting from angling. One of them is women in the workplace, especially women of color, and that is speaking to recruiting efforts that I'm seeing, which is more and more organizations that are looking to be more inclusive or wanting to hire people of color, but there's also complexity in that. So I'll dive into that with Amanda Jameson. And then also the impact of intentions. And this is predominantly speaking to women's groups. Getting into angling, I've seen a lot of women's groups and women's clubs and all this stuff. And it's super exciting. But at the same time, as a woman of color, it's interesting dynamic when there's an industry full of really good intentions, but harmful impact when it comes to social justice. So I'll be diving into that with Bianca. And I also have a couple on skills and setups. So I'm excited to kind of switch it up a little bit. It's a little bit different than the first few episodes. So some serious, some fun, some actual technical stuff that we'll get into. Also, what's next is I am totally open to new guests. I've already had folks reach out, and I'm open to more voices from people of color. The space has been predominantly white men, and no offense to them, and I honor and truly respect the work and the foundation and everything that's been put into this industry has served its purpose. Moving forward, I would love to hear more people of color in this space as well, since we haven't really had the platform to do that. So that's also what I'm hoping to create. So if you are a person of color or want to be on the podcast, or if you have other folks that you want to recommend, feel free to send me a message or an email. I am totally open to that. I want to move on to special thank you to a couple monthly subscribers, Chloe Quinn and Simon Valencia. I truly appreciate that. That is through Anchor, which is a platform that I use to launch all these episodes and also have monthly subscriptions set up. So if that is of interest to you, feel free to head over to the Awkward Angler podcast on Anchor platform. So this has been a really fun project and I'm loving it. It's also a lot of work. So I'm currently open to sponsors, advertising, and contributions as well. If you would like to send Venmo, I am at Awkward Angler on Venmo, and I'm also on PayPal, which is Erica Nelson 25 at gmail.com. Again, that's for PayPal, and at Awkward Angler on Venmo. So I can accept, anything from a cup of coffee to monthly subscriptions to any amount that you want to contribute. Again, this is all volunteer for my guests and also for a lot of time out for me as well. So again, thanks again for your engagement and your support, and I'm looking forward to seeing how this evolves as well. All right. Have a good rest of your week, and next week we will see you with a new episode.